Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted that we're here today. I am the leader of Wiltshire Council, and for us, the military are a very important part of our community. And therefore, the National Armed Forces Covenant is an important part of how we do business in Wiltshire. The covenant is a promise to the nation that those who serve or who have served in the armed forces and their families are treated fairly, and they're not disadvantaged at all by the fact that they have been in the services. And that is quite complex. It is easy in a place like Wiltshire, but if you have a armed forces leaver coming to some counties where they don't understand quite as much as we do about the armed forces, then sometimes the covenant can be more difficult to deliver. So this session this morning is actually to get the first findings and the first views of how the covenant is working nationally across local government. And more importantly for me, it's how we can move forward with local government to serve better our serving personnel and our veteran communities. So I'm really pleased that we've got the panel today to debate this, and it will give you plenty of time to ask questions or make comments afterwards. So before we move forward, first of all, can I introduce the panel? We have Mark Lancaster, who is the Parliamentary Under Secretary of State for Defence and of Personnel and Veterans. Next to him we have Ray Locke. Ray was appointed the new Chief Executive of the Forces in Mind Trust. He was appointed in 2013. And lastly, I think somebody that I don't need to introduce, it's Simon Weston OBE, who is of course a Falklands veteran. I will say more about each of them as we go through, but first of all, can I ask Mark Lancaster to speak to you this morning? Mark was, as I said, appointed Parliamentary Under Secretary of State for Defence Personnel and Veterans in May 2015. He has been a district councillor before he became a Member of Parliament. Mark has also served in the Army between 1988 and 1990. And I believe he was with his old regiment last night, the Gurkhas, until early hours of this morning. Yes, Mark? Enjoying the Gurkhas' hospitality. So I'm going to, without more ado, ask Mark to say a few words. If we go up there. Thank you very much, Mark.
Well, thank you very much indeed. It's a pleasure to be here. And of course, it's traditional to start your speech by saying it's a pleasure to be here, but it really is. I mean, to escape Westminster at the moment is fantastic, as you can imagine. We have 170 Conservative MPs who wrote to the Prime Minister desperate not to have a leadership election, and we're having one. You have 170 Labour MPs writing to the Labour leader desperate to have a leadership election, and they're not having one. So all in all, it's quite an exciting place to be. People keep asking me how I'm going to vote today. I'm not going to vote today. I've given my vote to my wife, who's also a Member of Parliament, so I've no idea how I'm voting today in the leadership election. But hopefully, perhaps tonight, I will find out. And of course, people keep asking, it's not only who do you support, but it's who you're going to vote for. Apparently, it's not the same thing. Anyway, it is a pleasure to be here. And as the Minister for Defence, Personnel and Veterans, I always welcome the chance to get out and about to talk about the Armed Forces Covenant, our nation's promise to ensure that our service personnel, veterans and their families are treated fairly. And I'm particularly happy to be with you here today. Local authorities, you, are our key partners in delivering the Covenant, and I'm glad to thank you in person for your contribution. The support we've had from local authorities is tremendous, and it's difficult out there. I know from my own constituency the pressure that exists on local services. That you have achieved so much at such a time is real evidence of your commitment to the Covenant and to our armed forces. Since the Covenant launch, we have seen great examples of the support you offer and know many areas where the armed forces community is routinely included in thinking about policy and service delivery. but we need to be better at capturing and sharing this good work. That is why I asked the Local Government Association and Forces in Mind Trust to commission a review into improving local covenant pledges. Now, thanks to that review, we know better than ever just how the covenant looks from ground level and what more we need to do to improve and give our armed forces community the fair deal they deserve. Many of you here will already know about it. Nearly 500 representatives from local authorities were involved in the review, and in addition to nearly 400 members of the armed forces community and other stakeholders who participated. If your area were one of those who participated, thank you. Your contribution is vital. We can only deliver the covenant with your support. The final report will be ready by the end of July and published shortly after, but we can share some of its findings here today. And there is good news to share. In Glasgow, for example, Helping Heroes is a one-stop shop which is part funded by Glasgow City Council and run by SAFA. It provides advice from the armed forces community in the area in how to access services that are particularly relevant to them. It seems to work well because many who work for Helping Heroes are former military themselves, which adds trust and credibility for those accessing services. In Oxfordshire, each armed forces base has a base champion, who is a county councillor from the division on which the base sits, or a neighbouring division. These champions promote good relations between the base and the local community, and may help armed forces families with schooling, for example. And it goes both ways. MOD land and buildings are being used for community activities such as sports, events and fairs. While in Wiltshire, their very proactive approach with families who will be moving into the area from Germany when bases there close has smoothed the transition of service families and ensured they have a clear picture of what to expect and how to prepare for it. But while there is good news, there's also evidence that all of us have more to do. The review emphasises why it matters that we get this right. Over 38% of the armed forces community who took part in the review felt that they had been disadvantaged as a result of service life. If you consider that our own surveys show that 29% of service personnel and 41% of service families do not know anything about the covenant, it becomes clear that one of our priorities must be to tell more people about the covenant. The review has also indicated that expectations about what the covenant can deliver can be unrealistic among members of the armed forces community. My department will need to do its bit to address this. We also hear from our people that there are some really good policies out there, but frontline staff in local authorities don't always know about them. So not only do we need to tell more people about the covenant, we need to get better at explaining what it is and how it can help them. To be clear then, the Armed Forces Covenant is a promise from the nation that those who serve or have served and their families are treated fairly. Underlying that promise are two principles. The armed forces community should not face disadvantage compared to other citizens in the provision of public services. And secondly, special consideration is appropriate in some cases, especially for those who have given the most, such as the injured or through bereavement. So what do we mean by these principles? What do we mean by the first? Where do our armed forces community find themselves at a disadvantage in comparison with their fellow citizens? In many ways, for example, losing their credit histories and therefore access to financial services because of overseas deployments, something that we're addressing with the financial institutions who have signed covenant pledges. And of course, the armed forces community is very mobile. Service families have to move around a lot, possibly with little notice, all while dealing with the stresses and strains that operational commitments and service life can bring. So we need you to continue to ensure that key policies in housing, healthcare and education are flexible enough to reflect the realities of life in the armed forces now and into the future. This doesn't mean that our people should jump to the top of the queue or be given special treatment as a reward for good behaviour, but it does mean that we can't allow them to fall behind or be forgotten. It doesn't mean that returning to their home after years of service, they're automatically entitled to a house. But it does mean that they've the right to have the same local connection and consideration as their old school friend who never left his hometown. It doesn't mean that children of service families should have guaranteed places at the county's top school, but it does mean that there should be procedures and enough flex in the system to allow these children a school place, albeit often at short notice, sometimes short on detail and potentially mid-term. Looking at the second principle, we all agree, I'm sure, that we have a duty as a nation to support those who have made the greatest sacrifices on our behalf, those who have been severely injured or those who have been bereaved. But what does the government mean here? Well, for us in the MOD, it means, for example, ensuring that an injured soldier gets the very best medical and rehabilitation treatment that this country can offer and is equipped with the training and resources he needs to look to the future with confidence. But what could it mean for local authorities? In the case of the injured soldier, it can mean ensuring that the local GP is aware of their new patient is a veteran and may therefore have additional issues to consider. Or it could mean ensuring that war pensions or compensation payments are not taken into account when assessing eligibility to benefits or for grants for housing adaptations, and ensuring that the council employee dealing with a claim is aware of their council's commitments under the covenant. While initiatives like free gym memberships or civic events are welcome and truly appreciated as demonstrations of the community's support and respect, it's the nitty-gritty of people's lives that the covenant was designed to address. Education, health, housing, employment. These are issues that are most important to our people, to get, in short, the same chances in life as their neighbours and friends. This is the message that we're delivering to our people. Covenant champions have been appointed within each of our armed forces units to act as a focal point within their service unit to coordinate Covenant work and help us better deliver the Covenant message direct to our personnel and their families. One of their key roles will be to feed the concerns of the armed forces community back to us in Whitehall so that we can share them with you and other stakeholders and resolve them together. We have also recently relaunched our Covenant website, making it more user-friendly and more interactive so that we can begin a national conservation between the armed forces and the communities that they serve and vice versa. And here we need your help. The conversation we're having nationally most successfully in taking forward Covenant initiatives were those that were best at communicating with our own organisation to their client groups and to other Covenant stakeholders. Training for frontline staff, an outward-facing forum which meets regularly and includes military representatives, a clear public statement of expectations, an action plan which leads to action and is monitored, a web page with key information and links, all were discovered to be in place in the most effective authorities. But we know that it's not always easy to get good ideas off the ground, ideas that could make the lives of our people and your role in helping them access the services they need that little bit easier. That's why I'm pleased to come here to talk about a new priority of our Covenant Fund, which opened for applications on Monday, the 8th of July. This will award grants of up to £500,000, specifically to local authorities to support their delivery of the Covenant. This will allow local authorities the opportunity to address the issues and aspirations that have emerged from the review and from your own experience in delivering the Covenant and the improvements you feel can be made. Local and regional engagement with the Covenant Fund is vital. Last year's commitment of £10 million to projects across the UK evidenced this in the quality of applications that were funded. The national portfolio of diverse projects now being undertaken in local communities working in partnership will be monitored and evaluated so that we can understand the impact of the fund and the difference it makes. We will of course share this with our partners in local government. We recognise that covenants in each community may look quite different from one location to another, and that local partnerships will have identified their own needs and ideas of how to meet them. You are the experts in your own local areas, and we need your ideas and commitment to drive the covenant forward. Please take advantage of the opportunity to get the covenant moving in your area. It's not all about money, of course. Some of the good work that was identified through the review doesn't incur a cost. It doesn't cost anything to adopt an action plan or appoint a covenant champion. It doesn't cost much to conduct regular policy reviews or to collaborate with partners. And commitment doesn't cost a thing. That's something I'm proud to say that we've seen a great deal of. I'd also like to take this chance to talk more about the role that you can and are playing as employees of members of our armed forces community, whether that be a veteran, with a great skill set and work ethic, or a member of the service family, who may require a bit of leeway with their leave to allow them to fit in some family time around operational deployments or a reserve. As a reserve myself now for some 28 years, I am always keen to promote the benefits both of being and employing a reserve. When employers welcome a reserve to their team, they acquire portfolio skills and behaviours that are beneficial in any modern working environment. Much reservist training is now accredited with civilian qualifications, so employers know exactly that the standard of person they are getting with when they look at a reservist CV. I have to confess that as a bomb disposal officer, it was slightly difficult to transfer that skill to civilian life. Recent research showed that nearly 90% of employers think that reservists are an asset to the UK's workforce. These are highly skilled, well-trained professionals who can add real value to your organisation. Supporting defence by employing reservists can also be good for organisations in a number of ways. Showing support by signing the Armed Forces Covenant or winning an Employment Recognition Scheme award can enhance the reputation of an organisation. Gateshead Council, a recipient of the Gold ERS Award, is now recognised as one of the most forward-leaning armed forces authority within the North East, if not the country, proactively supporting the armed forces community. As we continue with our work to deliver a cohesive Covenant policy across Whitehall and to explain our aims and expectations for the Covenant nationally, so we need you to continue your work by carrying out the initiatives and coordination of Covenant policies in your area. The one message I would leave you with today is the vital importance of continuing to talk about the Covenant to one another, to our armed forces community, and to the communities where they live. By sharing what we're doing and how we've done it, we can better inform our people of what they can expect from the Covenant, and we can also learn from one another and together ensure that the Covenant can go on to support our armed forces community for generations to come. Regardless of the EU vote and any change in my party's leadership, and I'm delighted to predict that I think this country will soon have its second female Prime Minister, which I think is a fantastic thing, I know that the whole of the country supports the Armed Forces Covenant and will want to ensure its principles are honoured for decades to come. You have all made a great start, and there is lots more that we can all do to deliver our Armed Forces community. This has a direct impact on helping them to maintain the defence of this country and our way of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for thanking us for what we are doing, but I appreciate that you are challenging us to do a little bit more, and I might talk about that at the end of the session. You will have a chance to ask questions or make comments to Mark later. But it's now my pleasure in introducing Air Vice-Marshal Ray Locke, CBE. Ray, as I said, was appointed the new Chief Executive of the Forces in Mind Trust in 2013. But that was after his varied career in the RAF, including flying combat missions during the Gulf War, and the command of, I'm really pleased to say, the airbase of Lynham in Wiltshire, which is now REME and has gone to the army. But we miss you still in Wiltshire. He conducted numerous operations and deployments and served for over 6 years in Germany. More recently, Ray has worked in the UK's Defence Academy site in Shrivenham, initially as the Director of Advanced Command and Staff Courses at the Joint Services Command and at Staff College, and then as Head of the Joint Doctrine, Air and Space. After a final promotion, he returned to the Staff College as its Commandant, from where he transitioned into civilian life at the end of 2012. You're very welcome, and we're looking forward to hearing what you've got to say, Ray.
Great, thank you, Chair. Now, you're not going to get from me the gravitas of the Minister, the ability to influence to the political level. You're not going to get from me the truly extraordinary tale of overcoming personal adversity, which I know Simon won't talk about because he'll talk about the Covenant, but is an inspiration to all of us. What you're going to get from me is a very direct, perhaps rough and ready, snapshot of where we are with this project that we've been engaged upon, which is improving the delivery of local government pledges. Now, my challenge here is to get in 10 minutes you sufficiently interested that you want to engage with this report when we publish it very shortly. There are about 75 of us in the auditorium, and if you take away my friends and my family who've come to cheer me on today, you know, that's about 50 people. So we're probably singing to the choir. So who is going to go out, get the hundreds of delegates who haven't come in today to listen to about the Armed Forces Covenant, the 20 or so people already this morning who've walked in through, had a look at the title and decided, oh no, that's not for me, and have walked back out again to get a coffee. How do we engage with them? That is my first challenge to you all. Now, I am going to be boring for 30 seconds. I'm going to tell you why Forces in Mind Trust invested £50,000 of its charitable endowment to do this piece of research. Well, it's very simple. We have a vision at the Forces in Mind Trust, and it is that all ex-service personnel and their families lead successful and fulfilled civilian lives. And I rather hope that in this hall, in fact in this whole centre, probably across the nation, we would all aspire to that vision. And that, of course, is what vision should be. They should be aspirational. And our mission at the Trust is to enable them to make a successful and sustainable transition into that civilian life. And one of the key tools that we have available to successful transition is the Armed Forces Covenant. And so for us, it was a no-brainer to satisfy our mission to partner with the local government association, with the MOD, who pretty much guard the covenant within Whitehall, to do this piece of work, to present to you, the deliverers of local covenant pledges, a bit of independent evidence that will allow you to understand how you can do what you already do in many, many cases very well, and how you can do it better. And that is why we are funded. And I must thank Abigail Gallop in the front row here for securing me this opportunity today to talk to you very briefly about the report, and as I say, to whet your appetite so that you go from here and you tell your friends and colleagues, we've got to get hold of this report, we've got to read it, and we've got to act upon it. Now, I mentioned independence. Independence is really important to the Forces in Mind Trust. We have to be credible, otherwise you won't listen to what we have to say. And so we enlisted the help of Shared Intelligence, and Phil Swan, the director who largely conducted the research, is also with us today, and I'm sure Phil will be around over coffee as well to take your questions. So it's a good piece of work. What I only really have time to do is to just give you a few highlights from the report, which is still being finalised. We aim to publish it early August. My intention is that we will also produce it in hard copy so that you can take it back, you can talk about it in coffee bars, leave it to read on the train, and stuff like that. But we also make other resources available to you. I'll come back to that. We want to establish a network, a learning network, not another champions network. We want to establish a way whereby this really good practice can be shared and can be taken up for the people whose practices are perhaps not quite as good. Now, the covenant you will find referred to throughout recent documentation. Lord Ashcroft's Veterans Transition Review refers to it. The Minister has referred to it. But actually, the covenant itself, you can trace back in history to the Peloponnesian Wars in the 5th century BC, where you will hear reference to this contract between a nation and its armed forces. And in return for the armed forces giving up their personal freedoms, subjecting themselves to military justice, putting themselves in harm's way, dying for their country, in return, the nation undertakes to look after those people when they return from their service. So it's not a new concept, but I have to tell you, my first experience of combat, which is in 1991 in the Gulf War, only 9 years after Simon's, which seems to me extraordinary now, part of history. But my first experience, and the covenant wasn't spoken about. It didn't really exist. It didn't appear in any of our doctrine. It just didn't exist. So my congratulations to all those who have been involved in bringing it to really something much more substantial than it is today. So enough of background. Let me tell you what we've actually done so far. We have done a large amount of engagement. We've gone to stakeholders, ghastly word, but I think we all know what we mean by stakeholders. We've sent out surveys to chief executives, to elected officials, to covenant champions, and members of the armed forces community. So some quite extensive surveying has gone on. We've also conducted these deep dives where the team has gone to a local authority and spent a whole day with a whole range of staff, again, elected members, local government officials, local charities, the whole community, and spent the whole day with there. Since I did this slide last week, we've also done deep dives at Bradford and Wigan. The team are at Plymouth today. Moray is in progress, and I understand we're doing Westminster next week. So that's a dozen deep dives to give a really good qualitative understanding of what is happening out there with local covenant pledges. And so the three key themes I'd like to pick out at this stage are, as I've shown there. And the first one about expectation. I hope you can just about make that out, but essentially what that is saying is that from a survey of local authorities, 90% of people believe that there is a clearish enough understanding about the Armed Forces Covenant. And on the right-hand side, half of people who responded had some sort of mechanism for briefing the front line. And yet, what we have found consistently through all our work is that there is a huge mismatch between expectation and what is actually being delivered. And it's at every single level. There's a mismatch between what policymakers in Whitehall expect, and there's a mismatch between what is being delivered. There's a mismatch at local authority level, and there's a mismatch at ultimately those members of the armed forces community who wish to avail themselves of what might be delivered under a local covenant pledge. You can read the bullets there. Some of our suggestions about what can be done. This is not, because it cannot be, about setting down a series of prescriptive tasks resourced by central government and delivered in a statutory way. I just simply don't believe that is how it needs to be done. But there does need to be a much clearer exposition of what the Armed Forces Covenant actually means. And it needs to be understood better in Whitehall, and it needs to be understood better by members of the Armed Forces community. We did a survey of the local authority champions, and on the right-hand side you can see that by far and away the most important piece that they would like to see is a clear statement of expectation. So this is not costly. This is people sitting down and sharing what it is this is all about. And as I say, you look at it from Whitehall, it looks very different than if you look at it from Whitehaven. That's the only other place I could find that started with white. So if you're representing white somewhere else, apologies, I should have picked you up. 0 out of 10 for spelling, but 10 out of 10 for quick response. Isle of Wight was the call from the front here. Thank you. Let me talk about preparation. And by this I mean preparation of the armed forces community as they transition. And if you talk around the exhibition stands to our colleagues at the Families Federations and the other, the MOD engagement cell, then it would be interesting for you to understand what there is about preparation. We did a piece of work in 2013 called the Transition Mapping Study, and out of that, we emphasised the importance of an individual taking responsibility for his or her own transition, for making sure they're prepared. But we heard tales of people going into classrooms to be given packs of information about what to do when they leave the armed forces, and they exited the classroom, they dumped the packs into the litter bin, and walked off down the corridor. The teacher went in, got the packs out from the litter bin, put them on the 30 desks, and waited for the next lot to come in. Now, first of all, personal responsibility, but secondly, there's more to doing this than simply herding people in, giving the information. It is the responsibility, I'm afraid, Minister, of the Ministry of Defence to ensure that its people are prepared to transition. It's not enough just to give them the information. They have got to be able to retain it. And let's be honest, some of our people leaving the armed forces were not recruited for their ability to do rocket science. And so it is behoven upon the employer to ensure that understanding is there. I had a lovely day out in Gloucestershire. I happen to live in Gloucestershire, so it's particularly nice on one of the deep dives. And the most vociferous person talking about the lack of preparation of the armed forces community was the representative from the Royal British Legion, who are one of the key supporters of the armed forces community. I think, for me, that was very telling. So let me just quickly move on, and then I'll close, into a little bit of delivery. And I'm going to quickly move on because it gets very, very detailed at this stage, and I would encourage you, when you get the report, to go through what we have identified as the core local infrastructure. There probably needs to be a forum, but one size does not fit all. And if you have a lot of churn, you might want a forum, for example, to have more. Where is your elected member champion going to come from? Well, we would argue it probably needs to be in cabinet as a minimum, but again, it's horses for courses. If you've got a reserve force person or a veteran, then perhaps that person might be better off being the champion. And when it comes to action plans, then we will provide a toolkit. That is the purpose of this. So implementing it, again, a long list of stuff which we'll make available on the LGA website, which we'll make available through the resources, to get a real understanding of what can be done. And it will be up to you, ladies and gentlemen, to take this back to your local authorities, tailor it to what suits you, and then apply it. And this is not costly, because if we go through to the stakeholder survey, you can see that the list of things that the stakeholders would ask for to be treated fairly, this is relatively modest. It's a bit of work, but this is not something that's going to set your budgets back. So I would encourage you to do it. And to encourage me to finish, a presentation with a pretty picture of my dogs in it is a really good way for me to say it's time to wrap up. And if you've been bored by everything I've said, at least you can remember I've got two cute little Border Terriers, Minnie and Alfie. Some other work we do is around health needs assessment. We've published one for England, we've published one for Wales, we're publishing one for Scotland and Northern Ireland in the autumn, and then a UK roundup. And this will help one of the aspects that is not really covered in this current study, and that is the delivery of mental health needs. And I would highly encourage you to get hold of this report through our website, or ask myself and my colleague Mary, who is here. And everything we do is going on the Veterans Research Hub, which goes live in September, hosted at Anglia Ruskin University, funded by ourselves and Lord Ashcroft. This is the place you will go if you want to know anything about veterans. And then generally, and finally to conclude, is it a problem? Well, if you look at this little pie chart, you will see, and I hope you can just about make it out, that about a third of the armed forces community have faced disadvantage. In other words, they feel they have not been treated fairly at some stage. So I finish where I start. This is a taster of our report. Get hold of the report. Make sure you read it. Give it to the people in your areas who can do stuff with it. Get it to the people who aren't in the room today. Because we, Abigail and I, we're going to do everything we can, together with the Ministry of Defence, together with the Cabinet Office, to get this information out there. It's going to be useful because, actually, that is what our armed forces community deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray, and thank you for challenging us hard. I think the Forces in Mind Trust has a great chief executive, and we look forward to working with you in the future. And I very much look forward to the review coming out. I have done a deep dive with Phil and Wiltshire people as well. So we look forward to that coming out, and we will take it very seriously and hope we can move forward.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, last but not least, I'd like to welcome Simon Weston, OBE, who is, of course, we all know, a Falklands veteran. In 1982, the Sir Galahad was destroyed in Bluff Cove on the Falkland Islands. On board was Simon Weston. He was then a Welsh Guardsman, and he will be the name and the face that is going to become well known for the struggle he has had to overcome his injuries, which were 46% burns, and redefine his role in life. Simon endured years of reconstructed surgery, including 70 major operations or surgical procedures. But following his injuries, Simon's road to physical, spiritual, and mental recovery saw him active in a number of highly successful ventures. He remains a tireless worker for the charity and the charitable work, and this has earned him a well-deserved OBE in the 1992 Queen's Birthdays Honours. He was also awarded the City of the Freedom of the City of Liverpool in 2002 in recognition of his bravery and his charitable work in the region. He has appeared in the top 100 Merseyside list in 2003 and honoured as one of the top 100 Welsh heroes in 2004. Simon, you're very, very welcome here today, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Just to qualify the top 100 Scousers, it's my favourite acknowledgement I've ever had, because I came 75th of the 100 top Scousers. I came one behind a dead horse, red rum. So I wouldn't get carried away with too many of the honours and awards that people get. There's lots of other things, but I won't go into them because this is not the forum. But I've listened to all the things that people have said about the Covenant. I had the dubious honour of being invited to be a part of setting up the Covenant. And what I felt after I was involved in it pretty much sums up an awful lot of what a lot of service people feel, especially when you leave the armed forces. I felt like I was there, and there was a lot of predetermined ideas that were already going to go ahead whether I was there or not. What I had to say was largely ignored. And I was there pretty much as window dressing, just so that it get promoted on TV. And a lot of ex-service people feel, and maybe this won't come out in any report, but a lot of ex-service people and even a lot of current service people feel that they're only wanted when there's an election or something else going on. They don't feel that they're actually a part of a lot of things. And there is a great deal of ambivalence to the ex-service community, hence why, as Ray has already said, why the auditorium is largely empty. And that's very, very sad, because these are people. It's people's lives we're talking about. It's people who have served in the armed forces. And strangely enough, I've come across people in councils who really don't like armed service personnel and don't feel that they should have any preference over certain things. For service people, they can't determine where they're going to live, apart from maybe an area where they've served or where they came from. When they come home, as has already been pointed out, they've served many years abroad or far from their birthplace. And when they go back to those places, their children, they need to be resettled. And the biggest worry for most service people is their children. And from my own experiences right now, my grandson has struggled to get a school in Cardiff. How hard is it for service people to resettle their children? And you've got to understand, their children have been brought up in a disciplined environment. To then go to some of the more challenging schools, they're ill prepared for that. And it's a great concern for service people. Service people don't want to be treated with preferential ideas. They don't want preference. What they want is to be treated as fairly as everybody else. Sometimes you think and you see other people being treated far more fairly than you. And that's a disappointing thing. It's disappointing because these guys, these girls that have gone in, done their bit, they come home and all they want is the respect for what they've done. They're not looking to have their faces patted with buttercups. They're not looking to be spoilt. They're looking to be treated fairly, is all it's about. But sadly, that isn't always the case. It isn't always the case. A lot of the people that come back, if you're injured, there's a lot of things put in place for you, because we all understand it is more difficult for those people. But if you come back and you have no physical scars or physical damage, then people really don't see what's gone on, what's happened, where you might have been. And accessing local services, as much information as is out there, and as you've already heard about the packs getting thrown in a bin, service people are not going to wade through a foot deep of paper to access the one bit of information they need. They're looking for somebody in place, easy access points where they can just go and get the information they need to make their lives smoother so they transition more comfortably. They don't want it, they're not expecting it to be easy. If they wanted an easy life, they would have never have joined the military. They would have never have gone and done the job that they've done all over the globe. So it's not about easy, it's about access and made simpler. And as Ray has pointed out, there are an awful lot of the guys that join the military are not there for their IQ. A lot of them can't spell IQ. I mean, trust me, I know, I was an infantry soldier. But what we do know is what we desire to make our lives better. What we do know is that what it takes to make our lives better. And we can't do it without you guys. We can't do it without people being willing to play a part in that transition. The Covenant, it works in part, but there are lots of local authorities that aren't involved, haven't really engaged with it. There are people that pay lip service to an awful lot. And sadly, for an awful lot of the ex-service community, we are used to lip service. We are used to people saying they will do something and it never happens. And that's a tragedy, because all that does, it disillusions people, and then they start to lose faith in the system. I'm involved in a charity that works with veterans in prison. And what we do is we've had a 100% success rate, so nobody can question us at this moment in time about whether it's a valid thing to do. For every service person we stop from reoffending, it saves every local authority thousands and thousands of pounds. Yet, believe it or not, we're meeting resistance from some councillors because they don't think that what we're doing is valid. How naive is that? How negative is that? How stupid is that? The cost to every community if somebody commits a crime can run into the hundreds of thousands of pounds per year. And yet, for a small amount and a support, we can stop the local authorities having to shell out all of this money. And when they come back and they're out of prison, they end up on the DWP bill. They're on the work and pensions bill, which costs again. So all the way down the line, it's costing. Isn't it better that we start to invest? To see that sometimes if you shell out at the beginning, you're not going to have to fork out huge amounts at the end. And the covenant is not just there for those that have done well and not committed problems. The ones that have committed problems may, and I'm not saying all have, mental health problems. The mental health may not be the reason why they've gone to jail, but it could be the reason that they start their downward slide. Because alcohol is the biggest problem that most of them faced. But they start drinking to excess at some point, and maybe, just maybe, it's because of their service. The amount of veterans in prison at this moment in time is astronomical. It's disproportionate for the amount of service people we have compared to the population of this country. And I know that those figures will be discussed, debated and dismissed. But it is close to 10,000, and I know the MOD and the government have said it isn't that, but it is. Because we work in the prisons, and in the 21 we work in, the minimum we've worked with is about 28 in each prison. And if that's symptomatic of every prison in the country, you can do the maths yourself. There are far more in there than we want to realise. But the only way we can stop these people from reoffending, we can stop them from offending if we can nip them in the bud and get them the right access to help when they come out. It should be done whilst they're in the armed forces, but people don't. They don't actually present with problems whilst they're serving in the same way. A lot of it happens when they leave. And it's when they lose their relevance. And everybody here, I would suspect, knows what it's like to feel relevant. But how many people have ever felt irrelevant, no longer wanted, no longer needed by their community, by people that they once respected? Because a lot of these people, they come out, they had responsible jobs, they were in charge of multi-million-pound projects, and all of a sudden they're no longer relevant. Because believe it or not, and whether you've heard of this, but there are some companies, the second they see a military CV, it goes straight in the wastebasket. Because they don't see the service people as being relevant. And it's at their own cost. Because all of the companies that I've ever worked with and worked for that have employed ex-service people have said just how excellent they are and how much they've improved their business. And business is all about, at the end of the day, the bottom line is money. And it seems to be that money ends up being the reason we don't want to do things, that we find a way to resist making the changes that will bring about the success that we need. And the success is there to be had and enjoyed by all local authorities, because the more you ingratiate and get involved with ex-service people and help them transition more successfully into your communities, the amount they contribute and can contribute and will do, you would be surprised. Because service people, they turn up on time, unlike an awful lot of civilians. They turn up wearing the right gear, the right clothing, unlike a lot of people that I've had the misfortune of working with. And they don't just look to put their coat on 5 minutes before they finish the day. They do the job until it's finished. That's the type of people you can employ. You can get involved in things, because that is the ethos, that is the work ethic that they've had. But sadly, when they come out, people don't see that. And that's why we have a problem. We have a lot of service people living on the streets. We have a lot of service people who are who are an issue. But we need to deal with it. We need to solve it. The covenant needs to deal with all of those things. The thing is, the covenant is working well in so many areas, in so many things. And that never gets talked about. But we do need to challenge ourselves. We do need to understand that there are things that we need to do to bring about the change that will change these people's lives. Because the second we take them out of the system and out of the problem area, then we're actually able to transfer that money into other areas, to do better things with it than having to spend our time worrying about these individuals, the ones that we are working with. But like I said, we have had 100% success rate so far. But by nature of the veterans that are in problems and in prison, we do know that when they come out, we are going to have some failures. It's an inevitable thing, because they've let themselves down once, they'll let themselves down again. But most of these people realize that they've done that and they're not going to be a problem again. But we do need more help. But this wasn't even addressed in the covenant. This wasn't even thought about in the covenant, dealing with people that have these problems. But if we don't do something and we don't act now, we will have a problem, a much bigger problem, because we have so many service people that have been, done and seen so much. And they're all returning home. So we're going to have many more thousands of people back here who've done those things. And the one thing, the great Bobby Robson said about footballers, the one thing you can guarantee with footballers is they'll let you down. And in every regiment, there's always one or two that will let themselves and the regiment and the armed forces down. Because there's always somebody in the British military who will wake up on Monday morning and put their hand up and is willing to be the idiot that some village is missing. That's the way the military is. I missed that part, by the way, because it was so funny on a Monday morning. Oh, you can't believe, you really can't believe. But the points come back to that if we are going to get it right, we all need to come together, we need to pull together, but there needs to be one standard, not letting people make it up. People have read the Bible, they've read religious text, and they've interpreted it to mean what they want it to mean, rather than what it was meant to mean. We mustn't let the covenant be interpreted in the way that people want to see it. Why can't we have it just as one thing, one standard, everybody accept it, everybody work to achieve it, make it happen? The thing is, we can make it happen. We can do it. It's not that complicated. There are complicated issues, there always will be. But if we have one set of standards and everybody adheres to them, these people won't be lost to the system. They won't be lost to the ether. And I don't know about you, but I've been incredibly lucky with my life after everything that has happened to me. But I care about these people. I care about them because they care about what they do. They care about each other. But it is for the greater country to care about them, not just on Remembrance Sunday. These people serve 365 days of every year. They also suffer when they come out 365 days of every year. We can't just treat them like cattle. If we do our best for them, they will give their best back. They've already proven that they can give their best back. They've already proven that they are the best we've got. They've never let us down in real terms. But if we don't get it right for them, we're going to pay the penalty in the long run. Because these people won't engage, they won't be involved, they will go somewhere else. And they're far better being here, working with us, working towards a better society in this country, than going to somebody else's country. I really care about people who wear the uniform and the people who used to wear the uniform. Remembrance Sunday is a great day. But when I go into prisons and they say, people have come in here and they've said, yeah, we're going to help you, and that's the first and last time they ever see anybody. And then when they come out, there's no provision at all for them. If their families have gone, that's all broken up because of crimes, because of the fact that they're in prison. If that's gone away, where do they go? Who's going to help them pick up the pace? There is largely nobody. So we need to include veterans who have been in prison into the covenant, because if we don't, we're just going to cost ourselves so much more. But there's a bigger cost than just money. There's the human cost. There's the familial cost. And we can't afford to keep doing this. We just can't afford to keep doing it, because it's just unfair on society. It's unfair on the families who've seen them go away to conflict, not knowing if they'll come home, and then all of a sudden seeing them go down the slippery slope of being in trouble. and ending up having to go to court and then having the stress of that and then having them in prison. And then if the relationship breaks down, then those people come home, where do they go? What do we do then? Sounds like doom and gloom, doesn't it? But it's working. The fact is it's working, but we do need more support. What we don't need is the resistance that we've come across from some people. But if we are going to make it work, like I've already said, we've got to do it together. We need to make the difference. And if people are wondering why we're on this planet, it is to make a difference. It doesn't have to be whatever the celestial gods are worrying about. It is about what we can do right here, right now. And it is to make a difference. As long as that difference, and it doesn't matter what the difference is, as long as it's positive, as long as we're doing something that helps, then we can bring about change. And change is all it's about. Changing attitude, listening to the little man rather than the big super elite. And we've seen issues around that recently, because the little man gets ignored for so long. And that's why people from my conflict were so angered by the way that we got treated when we came back. The public loved us. But when it came to anything else, there was nothing in place. I had no help at all when I came back from the Falklands. Nothing at all. So I thought when the covenant came around, I thought, wow, this is our time. Most of the Falklands veterans got engaged in campaigning to make things better for the modern veterans. I thought the covenant, yeah, wow. And then all of a sudden, after I'd been on telly once, I was discarded, and I felt, yeah, we're back to the same old, same old. Don't let that be the case with the covenant. Please adopt, and the recommendations you'll get from Ray's report, adopt, read it, digest it, understand what it is. Make lives better. That's the whole point of local authorities, local government. It is to help and to make people's lives better. Make it slightly easier. Life's hard enough as it is. Life's hard enough as it is. Like I said, my life is sorted. But it's taken 34 years to get here. It's taken 34 years to make my life a success. We can't wait that 34 years for veterans who have issues, who need to be supported. You know, it's very difficult, and as you've already heard from people, when the military decides that your job is over, that they're making you redundant, with the amount of pay that an awful lot of them get, and to move back into areas, certainly like Cardiff, it's near impossible for them to buy a house there. So they have to go onto the housing lists. They don't want to jump right to the very top, but at least look at their service life and say, well, you can start off here, and you haven't got so long to wait. Don't disadvantage them. They're not looking for super advantage. They just don't want to be disadvantaged. There we are. Thank you very much.
Simon, thank you. Thank you for what you do for our armed forces and our leavers of the armed forces, and for those that are on hard times. We really appreciate it, and I think probably everybody in this room has listened and hopefully learnt, and hopefully will go back to their organisations to think again about how we look at the armed covenant. Right, we have a few minutes, but only a few minutes for any comments or questions. Yes, there's a lady in the front here. Could you say who you are and where you're from, please? That would be helpful. Thank you. And there's a lady in the front as well.
I'm Pam Posnett. I'm the leader of Melton Borough Council, and I'm also a cabinet member of Leicestershire County Council, and I'm the armed forces person at the County Council. I'm really looking forward to that report coming out. We have signed the Community Covenant. All of the 7 districts in Leicestershire have. I'm very conscious we don't do enough with it. One plea I would have from you is that in our council at Melton, the British Legion have a desk. And so if anybody comes with a problem, instead of them having to send them somewhere else, they can walk across the floor, they can pick a telephone up, DWP are there, housing are there, they can get the help there and then. We don't have a large stock of housing, but what we do, we support them to go into private rental accommodation if that's what's needed. We do also do some work with prisons where we go in for people who are ready to come out of prison so that we're ready for them to come back into the local community. The pledge I would ask for is that you share with us that information, that you have got somebody who's coming into our area so that we can go and see them, we can talk to whoever is the person that's going to visit them in prison, and we can help them get back into the society locally. Education, as far as county is concerned, because most of schools are going academies now, we have less control over education and places in school, and that's something that really needs looking at. There is an Armed Forces conference in Nottingham in October, and what myself and the officer at county are planning on doing is going to that, and then we're going to have a meeting with the whole of the district to see what we can do to work with the Community Covenant and help fix it. As I say, we do a lot of work with the Defence Animal Centre in Melton because they're there, so you know it's easy access. But when people are spread around, it isn't. But one pledge I would make is make sure that every county council has at least one copy of that report, and please share information. I know there's freedom, you don't have to share people's information, but we have done it successfully in Melton with the health service and everybody else. So, you know, it can work and we can share that information and we can help each other.
Thank you very much. Mark, first of all, and then I'll move on to Ray.
Just a really quick comment on identification. It's one of the biggest challenges we face. Up until the point of discharge, we know exactly who our armed forces personnel are. At the point of discharge, of course, they go into the wide world, and if they quickly move address and don't notify, then we've lost them. We're doing a lot of work at the moment when it comes to medical records, aligning Defence Medical Services medical records with NHS records, so that there can be a seamless transfer, and that as we move the records across, they will be identified as a veteran. Equally, we do have problems, as Simon will probably vouch for, with our prison population, where many of our veterans in prison do not want to identify as veterans because they are embarrassed to be there. And equally, we have some people who identify as veterans who are not veterans because they feel that they may have a better quality of care. It's very difficult to keep track of our veterans. I have written to the Office of National Statistics to ask them to include the question on our next census as one way of trying to identify who they are. But so we are working on it, but it is one of the biggest challenges. Without that basic information, it's very hard to identify.
Just to say, it took Wiltshire 2 years to try to do a review on how many veterans we had, and it was extremely difficult. So if the Royal British Legion, I know, are very keen that the next census should show veterans, and I would support that fully. Did you want to say anything else either? No?
I was just wondering,
Simon?
is it not possible that we could use the national insurance numbers, because we all have them, they go with us wherever we are, and even if you go into prison, I mean, people, by then you are identified. Why can't we use that national insurance number just to identify the fact that you served? I got to be, I have to pay tribute to this government. They've done so much to support care after combat with the veterans in prison. We are only a year old, but we are now the official group that do so much with veterans, retraining them so that they have careers when they come out of the prisons. We have been given great support for that. But I take your point about sharing the information. The second we have enough information to make everything we have valid, it's like empirical data. You only appreciate it properly when you've got all that. We are only a year old, but we are making a big difference. But the government have been brilliant. The MOD and the Ministry of Justice have been fantastic. They've really supported the work we've done.
Thank you, Simon. One very last quick question. We are running out of time, so sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Gillian Ford. I'm lead member and deputy chair on the LGA's Community Wellbeing Board. Is there anything in particular that local authorities should be and could be doing with regard to the mental health issues?
Very, very quickly, because I should be being told off. Who would like? Do you want to say something, Simon?
Well, mental health is a huge problem. It's probably the biggest illness on the planet. And through service life, we all know that there are inherent dangers now. But it's not just not the private domain of the military or the armed forces. Anybody can have it. But for the local government, it's identifying the problem and then getting them access to mental health treatment. Combat stress are so under stress at the moment themselves because there is so much demand, but there's only a limited amount of time that they can deal with it. The NHS can't deal with it because they've got so many other stresses and strains. So there needs to be another plan, another idea worked up, because there's an awful lot of people presenting with
PTSD, with depression born from service, and we need to deal with that pretty quickly, because it's just at overstretch, really.
Right.
One of the areas which I didn't really speak too much about is this difficulty with NHS, CCGs, GPs, and the third sector as well. And it is a very confused picture. In terms specifically of mental health, I think I would just say that the reports that I referred to about our Joint Health Needs Assessment report does contain half a dozen very straightforward recommendations around planning for mental health services, which we targeted it at the NHS and Public Health England, but actually going through this project, it's become apparent that local authorities ought to be aware of it as well. So I'll work with Abigail to make sure that that report is widely distributed as well.
Just 2 quick points, if I may add. Of course, we always talk about service personnel who have it. One of the key things is to try and prevent it in the first place. So a lot of work is going in at the moment through our TRIM process, which is sort of a peer process within the armed forces to try and get early signs of mental health, to try and treat it. Equally, I think many people don't realise it's the one area where, both as a reserve and as a veteran, for up to 6 months after leaving the armed forces, veterans can still access Defence Medical Services mental health services as a way to try and support that as well. It really is an issue. I think in part not necessarily because we are having more and more cases, but I think one of the positives, dare I say, of the stigma of mental health slowly falling away is that more and more people are identifying and reporting, which has led to the rise.
Thank you. Well, we have come to the end of our session. Thank you all for coming. I wish we'd had more, and I think that gives us something to take back. Izzy Seckham is here, who has the LGA responsibility for the armed forces, and I'm sure she's noted everything that's being said. And I can assure you that I will be working with her and challenging her as to how we might get all councils in this country to take this a little bit more seriously, because that's the message I've taken back from today. Thank you so much, the panel, Simon, Ray and Mark. Thank you for spending your time, and I can assure you everything you said is being taken very, very seriously, and we look forward to the report, Ray.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.